Apparently, Absolute Martian Manhunter isn't really a superhero story. That's not just speculation, that is straight from the writer himself, Deniz Camp. He says it's not about superheroes, it's a psychedelic noir, a deeply personal sci fi story. He also says it's going to be influenced by some of the weirdest, most experimental sci fi and literary writers out there. And that raises some big questions about what this book is actually going to be. So let's break it down. If these influences are any indication, Absolute Martian Manhunter is going to be unlike anything we've seen from DC in a long, long time. First, we've got Thomas Pynchon. He's known for writing some bizarre reality warping fiction. His weirdest book is probably Gravity's Rainbow, which includes a character who gets turned on by missile strikes. But he's also written detective stories, kind of. He's got a stoner noir you've probably heard of. There's a movie about it, Inherent Vice, with Joaquin Phoenix. But it's different than your typical detective story. Everything kind of starts to come apart, including reality. Clues stop making sense. People change identities. It's pretty out there. Next, we got Ballard. J.G. Ballard is another weird one. His weirdest book is Crash. It's got some people in it who develop a sexual obsession with car crashes. I'm not saying Martian Manhunter is going to go that far, but if Ballard's got an influence on it, then I think it's probably going to be somewhat unsettling. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. That could be really interesting. And he's also dabbled in noir, but like Pynchon, he takes his own spin on it. He had a story called Super Can about a man who was investigating a murder at a corporate retreat, but instead of solving the crime, he discovers that the people there have turned to ritualistic violence as therapy. Then there's Le Guin. Ursula K, she does a lot of stuff with like identity, and that seems pretty perfect for Martian Manhunter. Her most famous book, The Left Hand of Darkness, happens in a world where people can change their gender at will. And finally, 2001, A Space Odyssey. This one could be, I don't want to say the biggest clue, but this seems to maybe this would suggest the vibe. It's very much about mystery and cosmic horror, the unknown. And so with this idea that John's alien consciousness is coming from another dimension or something, could really leave the door open for something like that. It does sound like we're getting a noir detective story, like Camp says. It's going to be different. Certainly much different from anything else we've seen in the Absolute universe. Supposedly, Absolute Green Lanterns is going to have sort of a cosmic horror flavor. Even that, I don't think, is going to be anything like this. Now, let's talk about what this actually means for John Jones himself. And it's kind of hard to have this conversation at this point because John Jones in this story is actually not really Martian Manhunter. The alien entity is, we don't know what his name is. John Jones is just some FBI agent who an alien comes and decides to live in his mind. Martian Manhunter in general has always had detective elements, whether it's as a private investigator, a police officer, or working with the Justice League and using his telepathic abilities. He is generally a character who you see helping to unravel whatever mysteries are out there that need unraveling. But now it may be that the real mystery isn't about a crime. It may be sort of like the mystery is himself. He's his own case. It could get really confusing. And it'll be interesting to see how much of an appetite comic book fans, mainstream comic book fans, have for something like that. Maybe it could lead a lot of new people into reading Martian Manhunter, get them excited about it. It's hard to see how all the pieces are going to fit together. We're definitely looking at one of the most experimental, reality-breaking stories DC has ever put out. But the big question is it going to feel like a Martian Manhunter story? Or is this book taking him so far from what fans love that they might as well have just made it be someone else? To figure that out, let's break down what it means for Martian Manhunter to be Martian Manhunter. He's always been a character of dual identity. He's got John Jones, the alien, and John Jones, the detective. He's the last survivor of Mars. He's trying to find his place on Earth. He's one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, but his most defining trait isn't his strength, it's his loneliness. At his core, Martian Manhunter is about loss, identity, belonging. Every version of him explores those ideas in some way. And now the question that we have to ask ourselves is, does Absolute Martian Manhunter push those ideas further or just break the whole thing? I mean, keep in mind, this isn't the first time that DC has experimented with this character. Sometimes it's worked, other times not so much. But even in the most unique takes, he's always been recognizable. You still see the same character underneath it all. The danger with Absolute Martian Manhunter is that maybe it's not just evolving him, maybe it's redefining him to the point where who even is he anymore? And at some point, the story may get so surreal and abstract that I don't really know. It's like, what are we doing here? But early to worry about that. Sometimes the best superhero stories happen when writers push a character into new territory. The ultimate question is not, is it different? Because of course it is. Even aside from all the things that we've talked about so far, I mean, it's absolute universe. It's supposed to be different. The real question is, does it understand what makes Martian Manhunter compelling and just what is the core or essence of the character? And does it set that up and pay it off in a way that everybody enjoys? I mean, at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't seem like Martian Manhunter at all, but if it's a good comic, people are going to keep reading it. And this is kind of the character, I hate to say it, but it's like if you're going to just totally wreck a character and totally change them, I don't know how many people are going to be feeling that bad about it when it's Martian Manhunter. Sorry, John. But my hope is, he says it's a very personal story. And if it's going to be very character driven and have those elements of psychological horror and cosmic horror, I think that could be really fun to read. And there is, I don't think, a better character to do that with. This idea that you're just some guy and all of a sudden it's not that the world is invaded by an alien. You're not abducted by an alien. It's like an alien invades your own brain. That could be good. So now I want to turn it over to you and find out what you think. Is this a fresh, exciting take? Or do you think it's too far from who Martian Manhunter really is? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe if you want to hear more about the Absolute Universe and other things comic book related and comic book adjacent. And I'll see you in the next one.